For me, when I watch any kind of reference, I look at what inspires me. I look at like what I go, ooh, how did he do that? That's really cool. And so then I'll tent pole that and I'll put a pin in that and I'll say, okay, I'm gonna use that. I don't know where yet, but I'm gonna use that. So the Puss in Boots shots, there was a flamenco dance, and the studio had brought in choreographers to do a lot of the dancing, but the shots that I did in the dance fight weren't choreographable, if that's a word. They were sort of made up. And so what I had to do was I had to analyze a lot of traditional flamenco dance and find out what made it real and live in the real world, while pushing it to the absurdity of the shots that I needed to do. The first shot where Puss starts dancing, in the storyboards, he was basically just hit a pose and he moved towards camera while his legs were just flying all around. But that wasn't the style of that film. That film was very naturalistic. So I had to look at flamenco reference and try to figure out how, if you're moving towards someone and your legs are flailing, how you could tap down from heel to toe and propel yourself forward, and so on and so forth, to make it live in a real world. And I'm proud that if you frame through that shot, there's never a point where there's not a realistic propulsion of his mechanics, but yet it still has the silly flaily foot thing that the storyboards wanted. And for that particular shot, there was this old, I think it's a spaghetti western film, where this man gets up on stage and starts doing this flamenco dance, and he's incredible. And in analyzing the motion, how he would do a spin, I watched this clip hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times and tried to just grab things from it. So I would sort of have tent poles, and I would say, okay, on that spin, I want him to start on his toe and spin around and catch himself on his heel and continue the spin all the way around into a final pose. Or as he spins, I noticed he drug his one arm behind him, and so I would sort of put these little tent poles in and say, I need to achieve those. And then the puzzle comes in trying to find places to get those in. So as I approached my shot, I knew that Puss had to get from here to here. And so as I'm animating it, I'm going, okay, so right here, he's gonna be dancing, he's gonna be flailing his legs here, and just before he leaps onto the barrel, I'll have him do that spin so I can get that arm thing in there. And then once he leaps up onto the barrel, then he can tap and spin, and I can get the other part that I've analyzed from that flamenco reference into that section. So it's kind of about finding the things you like and then planning how to fit them in to what you've been asked to do. I think that's probably the best way I can say it. There's not one method of doing it necessarily, but for me, when I watch any kind of reference, I look at what inspires me. I look at like what I go, ooh, how did he do that? That's really cool. And so then I'll tent pole that and I'll put a pin in that and I'll say, okay, I'm gonna use that. I don't know where yet, but I'm gonna use that. And then I'll do that to all my tent poles, and then I'll go back to my shot and I'll go, okay, this is what the shot requires. Now how can I fit my tent poles into that? And I tend to do that with a lot of shots. I rarely do I have a piece of reference that turns out exactly like the shot. Another Puss in Boots shot is the shot where he sees the laser pointer, and it was a culmination of live action reference of a person walking downstairs very frustrated, and a cat chasing a laser, and a cat running around in circles and then hitting a wall and then chasing it down the wall. And in doing that, the reference was Frankenstein together from probably 6 or 7 different sources, and all of those sources came from just looking at cat videos on the internet for hours and hours and hours and finding things that I'm like, ooh, that's cool, ooh, that's cool, ooh, that's cool. And so you'll save those little nuggets, or you'll put a pin in them, and then you try to find a way to get it into the shot that you've been asked to animate. It doesn't always work out, you know. Oftentimes you have to let stuff go, but that's the challenge, right? That's the real trick, is to get the things that inspire you into your work under the pretense of what you've been asked to do, you know. That's the trick. That was very challenging, but sometimes it's an animator's job to make something that's impossible seem possible. And I love that challenge. I think that's a really fun portion of my job. I love those puzzles when you have to work out the choreography of something that's not just, you can't just shoot reference and analyze it and match it. You have to actually bring creativity to it to make something impossible seem possible. That's the good stuff, and that's what I really enjoy doing as an animator. For me, if I had to just pick two things, if animators want to be in animating in a feature environment, I think it would be realistic acting and appeal. I think those two things, if they have that, realistic thought process acting, genuine acting, and appeal in posing, I think they're gonna do really well in today's flavor. The flavor changes, you know, but those two things don't seem to be going out of style anytime soon because they're traditional, they've stood the test of time, and I can't see any version of animation where genuine acting isn't gonna be important, or appeal, things that are pleasant to look at and have flow and design to them. So those two things, those core things are incredibly important to me. Beyond the fundamentals of animation, I think one thing that I would press from my own career is the ability to learn and grow from a critique. That's something that I tell students constantly because it's hard. I think it's human nature to be vulnerable, and it takes a lot of training to turn that off in your brain when someone's telling you that what you're doing needs to be better or needs to be different. I think that's a tough thing for any of us, but there is a way to take that and grow from it, and there's a way to actually learn to be appreciative of it. And I learned that early on, and I think that's why I've been able to succeed in this career, because I know plenty of people that hit a certain place where they didn't really care to hear critiques anymore, and as soon as you hit that, I think you're on the decline. You know, if you embrace critique, I think you're always on the incline. I think that's a fundamental truth of being a working artist in media today. Well, like a friend of mine said to an animator who showed his first shot in dailies on Ron's Gone Wrong. He was right out of school, showed his first shot, and everyone applauded, and he got a few notes, and then a friend of mine from the back said, congratulations, welcome to the world of animation. Get used to getting notes every single day of your life until you die. And we all laughed, and it's so true. And it's not a bad thing. It's a really, really good thing. All the people that gave me the toughest love in my career are my favorite people. My favorite people, hands down. And I think a lot of us would agree with that, you know, that those are the people that you remember, that you impact, that you credit with like being the person you've become. And I try to be that guy for my team now. It's tough when you see that look in their eye, the Puss in Boots, like, but I try to just give it to them honest, ask them if they have any questions, tell them the good things about their shot, because those are the things that really impacted me. Honesty is incredibly important, and being direct, I think that that's the fastest way to get better in any profession, is just honest, direct feedback. So aside from those two fundamentals of genuine acting and appeal, I would say learn from critique and love it. Love critique, ask for critique, you know, seek out critique, you know.